The final hours of Jesus' life began in the quiet, shadowed olive grove of Gethsemane, where the Son of God faced an internal agony that preceded his physical torment. Jesus withdrew from his disciples to pray, wrestling with the terrifying, crushing weight of the world's sin he was about to bear. He prayed with such fervent intensity that the Gospel of Luke records his sweat becoming like great drops of blood, a phenomenon known as hematidrosis. In 3 agonizing pleas, he asked his Father to take this cup of suffering away, yet each prayer concluded with the ultimate submission, "Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." The tension of this spiritual battle, the complete surrender of the divine will to the Father's plan, was the necessary prelude to the cross. The quiet agony was shattered by the arrival of the betrayal, orchestrated by one of Jesus' own disciples, Judas Iscariot. Judas led a large armed contingent of temple guards and Roman soldiers, guiding them to the secluded spot with chilling precision. The sign of betrayal was an act of profound hypocritical intimacy. Judas identified Jesus with a deliberate kiss, turning a gesture of affection into the symbol of ultimate treason. Jesus confronted the betrayer with sorrowful clarity, and upon the Master's quiet surrender, the remaining disciples immediately fled in terror, abandoning their Lord to the hands of his captors. The moment marked the profound loneliness of Christ, standing against the world, utterly alone. Jesus was first dragged before the Jewish religious council, the Sanhedrin, in a chaotic, illegal night trial, riddled with false testimony and procedural abuses. The high priest Caiaphas searched desperately for an official charge that carried the death penalty under Roman law. When no consistent charge could be found, Caiaphas demanded a direct theological answer. "Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus' bold, unreserved affirmative, "You have said so," was immediately seized upon. The high priest dramatically tore his robes, declaring the charge of blasphemy, sealing Jesus' fate under Jewish law. The tension of the religious injustice was absolute and swift. Meanwhile, Peter, the most zealous of the disciples, followed the procession at a distance, hovering nervously in the courtyard outside the high priest's house. He was confronted by a servant girl who recognized him as a follower of Jesus, an immediate, unexpected test of his loyalty. 3 times under mounting pressure and the fear of arrest, Peter vehemently denied knowing Jesus, sealing his own act of personal betrayal. Immediately after his 3rd denial, a rooster crowed, fulfilling the Lord's earlier prophecy. Peter was instantly seized by crushing, agonizing grief and rushed out to weep bitterly, his loyalty shattered by his own fear. As dawn broke, the Jewish leaders led Jesus to the Roman fortress to stand before Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, the only authority who could authorize a crucifixion. The religious charge of blasphemy held no weight with Pilate, so the leaders fabricated a political charge, claiming to be King of the Jews, a direct challenge to Caesar. Pilate, recognizing Jesus' innocence and the Jews' malicious envy, sought desperately to release him. The tension was immense, a struggle between Roman pragmatism and the spiritual hatred of the Jewish authorities. Pilate tried multiple maneuvers to avoid the brutal judgment, but he was trapped by political expediency. Pilate offered the crowd a choice, leveraging the custom of releasing one prisoner during the Passover festival. He presented Jesus alongside Barabbas, a notorious insurrectionist, murderer, and terrorist. "Which of the 2 do you want me to release to you?" Pilate asked the surging, manipulated mob. The priests and elders successfully incited the crowd to reject Jesus, leading them to roar the fatal, tragic demand, "Give us Barabbas." The crowd's rejection of the Prince of Peace in favor of a violent revolutionary was the ultimate symbol of the world's misplaced allegiance. The tension of the crowd's choice was irreversible. Pilate, fully aware he was condemning an innocent man and desperate to absolve himself of moral responsibility, performed a famous, theatrical gesture. He took a basin of water and washed his hands before the furious, demanding crowd, declaring, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." The crowd, sealing their own catastrophic fate, accepted the burden, crying out, "His blood is on us and on our children." Pilate, choosing political peace over divine justice, conceded to their pressure and ordered Jesus to be scourged, and then delivered him to be crucified. The Roman soldiers then subjected Jesus to the full, devastating brutality of the Roman scourging, a horrifying prelude to the cross. They stripped him, bound him to a pillar, and whipped him with a specialized whip designed to strip the flesh from the bone. His back was utterly mutilated, leaving him weak and bleeding profusely, the pain unimaginable. They then turned the humiliation into a sadistic game, mocking him as the self-proclaimed King of the Jews. They dressed him in a scarlet robe, shoved a plaited crown of thorns onto his head, and thrust a reed into his hand as a mock scepter. The final agonizing journey began as Jesus was forced to carry the heavy, rough wooden crossbeam through the narrow streets of Jerusalem. The blood loss from the scourging and the lack of sleep made the burden too immense for him to bear, and he repeatedly stumbled and fell under the weight. The Roman soldiers, recognizing that the condemned man might die before reaching the execution site, forcibly drafted a bystander into service. They pressed Simon of Cyrene into carrying the cross for Jesus, providing a brief, essential relief from the devastating physical strain. The procession finally reached the execution hill Golgotha, meaning the place of the skull, a barren, ominous location outside the city walls. Jesus was stripped again, and his hands and feet were roughly nailed to the wooden cross, a method of execution designed for maximum, prolonged agony. The cross was then violently raised upright, dropping into its foundation hole with a jarring, searing shock of pain that ran through Jesus' entire body. The Lord was crucified between two common thieves, fulfilling the prophecy that he would be numbered with the transgressors. Even on the cross, the scorn and the mockery continued relentlessly, compounding the physical agony with psychological torture. The chief priests, the scribes, and the elders gathered below, challenging him to prove his claims. He saved others. Let him save himself, they jeered. The Roman soldiers gambled at the foot of the cross, casting lots for his seamless tunic, fulfilling another ancient prophecy. Above his head, a sign was placed, written in 3 languages, proclaiming the political charge, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." The sign was meant as Roman mockery but testified to the ultimate truth. During the 3rd hour of the day, as the agony intensified, the natural world itself responded to the unparalleled horror of the event. A terrifying supernatural darkness fell over the entire land, starting at noon and lasting for 3 agonizing hours. This terrifying gloom was not a natural eclipse but a deliberate act of divine judgment, signaling the spiritual significance of the sacrifice. The darkness covered the ultimate transaction, the Father pouring out the full wrath of sin upon the Son. The tension of the surrounding cosmos acknowledged the supreme battle being waged. As the darkness lifted, the moment of ultimate spiritual crisis arrived, culminating in Jesus' agonizing cry of alienation. Just before the moment of death, Jesus cried out in Aramaic, quoting the psalmist, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which translates to, my God, why have you forsaken me?" This was not a cry of doubt, but a genuine expression of the horror of being completely spiritually separated from the Father, for the first and only time in eternity. In that moment, the innocent Son truly bore the crushing, complete weight of every human sin, experiencing the full consequence of final separation from God. Having endured the totality of the Father's wrath and completed the ultimate act of atonement, Jesus spoke his final triumphant words. "It is finished," he declared, a single powerful Greek word, tetelestai, meaning paid in full or completed. With that final powerful statement of completed victory, Jesus willingly surrendered his human spirit. He breathed his last, and the suffering human life of the Son of God on earth came to its physical end. His physical death was the ultimate, necessary sacrifice to redeem all of humanity from the eternal consequence of sin. The moment of Christ's death was immediately accompanied by a spectacular, terrifying series of supernatural events that revealed the massive spiritual shift that had occurred. The heavy, thick veil of the temple that separated the holy place from the most holy place was violently torn in 2 from top to bottom. This signified the dramatic, permanent end of the old covenant system and the immediate, new access to the presence of God through Christ's sacrifice. The ground shook violently, rocks split apart, and graves were opened, heralding the beginning of the resurrection power. The Roman centurion, the hardened professional soldier, who had overseen the execution, was deeply impacted by the entire spectacle, especially the signs accompanying Jesus' death. Overwhelmed by the spiritual force of the events, he was compelled to make a profound public confession of faith. "Surely he was the Son of God," the centurion declared, a pagan military man recognizing the true identity of the condemned man. His confession, coming from the heart of the Roman oppressor, was the first fruits of the Gentile world's acknowledgement of Christ's divinity. Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy, influential member of the Sanhedrin who had secretly become a disciple, boldly approached Pilate to request Jesus' body. Pilate granted the request, and Joseph, assisted by Nicodemus, took the body down from the cross. They quickly prepared the body for burial, wrapping it tightly in linen cloths and aromatic spices, as was the Jewish custom. They laid the body in Joseph's own new tomb, which had been hewn out of solid rock, and then rolled a massive stone over the entrance. The world thought the story had reached its final, tragic conclusion. The chief priests and the Pharisees, remembering Jesus' prophecy of rising again, were consumed by paranoid fear that the disciples would steal the body. They petitioned Pilate for an additional layer of security, sealing the tomb with the official Roman seal and placing a company of heavily armed Roman guards to stand watch. They were determined to ensure the physical permanence of Jesus' death, inadvertently making the subsequent miracle of the resurrection impossible to deny. The tomb was now the most guarded, most sealed grave in human history. Early on the Sunday morning after the Sabbath rest, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to the tomb with final burial spices, consumed by grief. Suddenly, a violent earthquake shook the ground, and an angel of the Lord descended from heaven with blinding speed. The angel rolled back the massive stone and sat upon it, his appearance like lightning and his clothes as white as snow. The Roman guards, terrifyingly effective until this moment, were instantly struck with paralytic fear, becoming like dead men before the angel's power. The spiritual power of God had finally shattered the finality of death. The angel spoke to the terrified women, delivering the most joyous, world-altering news in history. "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said." The words confirmed the ultimate victory. The grave was empty, death was defeated, and the prophecies were fulfilled. Jesus later appeared to the women and then to the 11 disciples, commissioning them with the Great Commission to go and preach the gospel to the entire world. The crucifixion was the ultimate sacrifice. The resurrection was the ultimate victory, guaranteeing hope and eternal life for all who believe.